Let's go ahead and get started on our class. I'm going to be filling in for Richard for probably the next 3 weeks. That's at least the current plan. His surgery went pretty well. He had a rough patch after the surgery with pain management, and I guess it took like 2 guys to get the hip socket taken out of him so that they could do everything to him that they needed to do after that. I always thought he's kind of contrary, but I think that was carrying it to an extreme. So, but he's doing a lot better now. They gave him some pain meds and some muscle relaxers, and he's doing a lot better now. And hopefully he'll recover in time to resume his normal class when the doctor says he can. It's his doctor's orders that says he has to stay at home for like a month. So that's what he's going to do, basically because Janie's giving him no choice. So we're in Revelation chapter 13 today. I didn't ask somebody. Tim, could you lead us in an opening prayer, please?
Father in heaven, we're thankful for the night's rest that you have allowed us to have, Father, and we're thankful for this morning that you have blessed us with a measure of health, Father, and the ability to be together to learn about you more, Father, and to worship you. We pray, Father, that as we go through our class this morning, that you would help us to take things from the material that's presented that would help us, Father, to grow closer to you and be stronger in our walk with you, Father, and possibly influence others. Father, we're thankful for the congregation here and for each and every member, Father, that is a part of it. We pray, Father, that you would continue to bless us as we make an effort in this place to shine the light of Jesus to this community. We ask that you would be with John, Father, this morning as he guides our minds, be with the other classes and the teachers as well. In Jesus we pray these things. Amen.
Okay. The theme of the book of Revelation is that the church will be victorious. The victory will not necessarily come easy, nor will it be free from the pain of persecution, but it is certain, and therefore our responsibility as the church, as Christians, is to be faithful and persevere through these times, because this is part of our mission, and we will be victorious and receive the reward that we've been promised. Since the establishment of the church, Christians have experienced persecution. It doesn't take very long in the book of Acts before we start to see that occurring. Some historians place the first persecution of the church somewhere between 18 months and 5 years after the day of Pentecost in 30 AD, when the gospel was first preached. It didn't take very long. The first persecutions were instigated primarily by the Jews, but around 64 AD, the Roman Emperor Nero arrested and martyred many Christians, and this is a brutal persecution that the Romans have done at that particular time period. And to a degree, that will be the pattern of relationship between the church and Rome for the next 3 centuries or so. It isn't always consistent, because Roman emperors are like other politicians in the sense that whatever my predecessor did, I'm doing something different. So if my predecessor persecuted, maybe I won't do it, or maybe I'll go even worse or something like that. So it won't be, 300 years of solid persecution day in and day out, but there will be periods of it, and it will be severe as it happens. In Revelation, more persecution and opposition are coming, but John is showing the church that it will prevail and the victory will be worth it. So, any questions or comments before we begin? Richard kind of instigated that you guys should ask me lots of questions. Well, I brought a ring binder and a pen, so I'll write those down and give it to him when he gets back. And so, you can call that segment Ask Richard Anything. Okay. In chapter 12, there were two main actors, the Lord and the dragon. The dragon here, I believe, represents Satan. And so this is the Lord and the dragon, Satan. There's a battle between the Lord and the dragon is defeated. So in chapter 13, the dragon's going to roll out plan B, or the second phase of his attack. If he can't win directly, he's going to attack indirectly. The dragon turns to persecute the rest of the woman's seed, the church, that's the church. That's where he's going to direct his actions next. And as we have already learned, the Lord in his righteousness and holiness sends forth words of warning and comfort. So he's telling us this is going to happen so that when it happens, we're not completely caught off guard by it, and also to let us know we will be taken care of. And so now we move ahead with two beasts and the power that they exhibit. So short version of this is that the two beasts work for the dragon. So all we really kind of have to do is to figure out what they are, and this is not going to come as a big surprise to you when we do that. So let's turn on our Bibles to Revelation chapter 13, 1 through 10, and I'd like a volunteer to read that. Go ahead.
And the dragon stood on the sand of the seashore. Then I saw the beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns were 10 diadems, and on his head were blasphemous names. And the beast which I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth was like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his throne, and his great authority. I saw one of the heads as if it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed. The whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast. They worshipped the dragon because he gave his authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who is able to wage war with him?" There was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemies, and authority to act for 42 months was given to him. And he opened his mouth and blasphemed against God. To blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, that is, those who dwell in heaven. It was also given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority over every tribe and people, and tongue and nation was given to him. All those who dwell on earth will worship him, everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who has been slain. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is destined for captivity, to captivity he goes. If anyone kills with the sword he must be killed. Here is the preservance in the faith of the saints.
Okay. This is a sea beast. And maybe the first question to ask is, who is the sea beast and why a sea beast? The sea beast is Rome. Why is it a sea beast? Technically, you could go anywhere in the Roman Empire over land, but the Mediterranean Sea is their interstate system and their trade system. And so typically, when they go anywhere in ancient Rome, they all go by sea. When Rome launches an invasion, they go by sea and come out on the land, and then they do what they're there to do. If the governors change governors or have a political leader going to some part of the Roman Empire, they're going by sea. So I think that's why it's a sea beast. The beast is described as a mashup of different animals. If you look at it in verse 2, it's a leopard, bear, lion. Those three are very powerful predators. Now, this is kind of similar, I think, to what was done in Daniel chapter 7, when Daniel has the vision of the four beasts there, and these four beasts typified these four empires, the Babylonian, the Persian, the Greek, and then later the Roman. This is kind of a mashup of that. Now, these ancient empires all had things that they did well. Babylon was very trade-driven and pleasure-driven. Persia was very militaristic. The Greeks were the intellectuals of the ancient world, and the Romans are kind of a mashup of all of those. They will be superior in basically all of those categories, and I think that's part of the reason why we have this as mentioned as leopard, bear, and lion. And the dragon is Satan, gave him his power and his throne and great authority. So this thing coming up out of the sea was called forth by the dragon, and the dragon has invested his power in it. So this is Satan investing his power in this sea beast here, probably the Roman Empire. And then note that the way that the beast is described in verse 1 says he had horns and diadems, and on his heads were blasphemous names. Blasphemy means to speak or to rail against. So the beast is coming up out of the sea is clearly going to be in opposition to God. That is its intent and its purpose here. And since we're going to be persecuting God's children, they're the ones who are going to suffer from this. But that's what he's talking about, blasphemy. He received authority or power from the dragon in verse 4. He is worshipped by his followers in verse 4. And he spoke arrogant words and blasphemies. And note especially verse 3, and I saw one of its heads as if it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed, and the whole world was amazed and followed after the beast. That's significant. That's almost looking miraculous there. And I'll get to more about what I think that is here in a minute. Any questions or comments so far? Okay, short history lesson time. Rome was noted in the ancient world as a city on 7 hills, and I think it's still noted that way today. There are 7 hills that it's built upon. There were 7 heads that represented 7 Caesars or emperors. Julius Caesar is technically the first emperor, but he was assassinated before he got full control over the Roman Empire. And so Octavian or Augustus became the first Caesar over the entire Roman Empire. Then you have Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, Nero, Vespasian, and Titus. If you line this up with a later chapter, I think it's 17, 9, and 10, 5 of these have fallen, and one is Vespasian. And then there's one yet to come that is Titus. That's not really in view here, though, at this particular time. The important thing is that you have these Caesars, and let's see. One of the things that the Romans did with their emperors was they deified them after their death. So when Augustus died, they set up little shrines. They proclaimed Augustus was a god, and they set up shrines, probably in temple cities and things like that, where you could go and worship Augustus. You could buy a bust of Augustus. You could interact with him that way. The only one they didn't do this to was Caligula. And the reason they didn't do this to Caligula because he was nuts. I mean, when he came to the throne, Rome was well off financially, and over a 4-year period, he drained the treasury to pursue his own pleasures. And the Roman Praetorian Guard, which is their kind of ancient secret service that's responsible for protecting the Caesar, they assassinated it. And the Praetorian Guard will have a history of doing that from that time forward, that if the Roman Empire gets completely out of control, they will arrange for dynasty change. But Claudius and then Nero persecuted the Christians, but he committed suicide around 68 AD. And I think Nero is the head that was fallen. And then it's resurrected, that we read about in the passage. And the way it's going to be resurrected, the reason that Nero is his head is because he was one of the first Roman emperors to say, I am God now. You must worship me as God now. Now, for most pagans and people like that, this isn't necessarily a problem. We got a whole multitude of gods, and throwing somebody else in the mix here, that's no big deal. But for Christians and Jews, this is a problem. And they will even offer the concession that, you know, just worship Nero. Just worship, you know, the Caesars. You don't even have to mean it. And you could, you know, mark that up on your moral ledger as of this is just the cost of doing business. We justify it that way and still be wrong. The Christians are not going to do this, and the Jews are not going to do this, and one of the things this will be characterized by the Romans is disloyalty to the Roman Empire. So anytime you need a target for your wrath and you need to kind of shake things up a little bit, there you go. That's what they're going to be able to do. So the next guy after Nero who's going to do this is Domitian, who, if this book is written around 90 AD, that Domitian's the emperor right now. He is saying the same things that Nero did. That's the resurrection of the head, because this thing is going to keep coming back. No matter how many times you kill that particular head off, it's going to resurrect itself in another emperor somewhere down the line. And it's going to do this for centuries. Any questions or comments?
John,
Yes.
when the Roman Empire conquered a nation, they adopted the nation of gods, so to speak. So my question is, now did Nero think that he was above all the gods of those other nations, or did he respect that, or do you understand my question?
Yeah, I mean, where did he place himself in there?
How did he place himself in that situation? So
I don't know that we have any historical information on that. I don't know that we don't. From what we know of Nero, he was pretty arrogant.
I can answer some of that.
Yeah.
The Romans believed that Zeus frequently came down and inhabited human form, and that's what they're claiming. Zeus is I am the demigod of that.
Yeah.
So he's the god of all the gods, but he's Zeus. Zeus is inhabiting him.
So
in that sense. Yeah, that's kind of, but it's that concept. It's not this or this, it's that he's being inhabited by, and who are you to disprove it? Because he's done it historically to them.
That's a good answer. Yeah. And they're not the only ones to have done this, you know, but they're the ones who take it the most seriously, at least in the ancient world. Other questions or comments?
John?
Yes.
Can I ask, I just want to get it clear in my head. So in verse 2, when he's giving the description of the beast as a leopard, bear, lion, so this is just a description of the ferociousness or of Rome coming down on the Christians and the Jews then?
Yeah, I think John is borrowing from Daniel in that description of you know, in Daniel 7, Daniel describes each empire that's coming as a beast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and here John is describing the Roman Empire as an amalgamation of beasts. A panther is a stealth, it's an ambush predator. You know, and generally speaking, if they pull the ambush off, they have a very high kill rate. You know, a bear is a power predator. They're a little bit more smarter than we give them credit for, but it's more of a power predator. And a lion, that's the king of beasts. You know, that's the one that can, you know, do it all. And so that's how he's characterizing Rome. Okay, any other questions? Okay, this is an interesting chart, at least it was to me. Daniel lists 7 heads that were important in his beast, and then there's 7 mentioned here. And if you look at the list on the left, they line up pretty good, but in Daniel and in Revelation, there's a Galba, Otho, and Vitellius. They are asterisk. In 68 AD, when Nero committed suicide, this is known as, in the Roman calendar, as the year of 4 kings, because those 3 guys and Vespasian all got into a major civil war over who was going to be the next Caesar. This is a very popular thing to do in the Roman Empire. If you want to be a Caesar, and you know, if you had enough wealth, you actually would go out and buy yourself an army and go off and conquer something to prove your military bona fides and establish, you know, credence to the idea of you being a Caesar. that didn't always work. A lot of times a guy would go out and buy himself an army and take it off, into Western Asia or something like that and get it all killed, including himself, but that was a way that you tried to establish your bona fides as a Roman emperor. These three guys with Asterix and Vespasian were all commanders. Vespasian, when this broke out, is at Jerusalem laying siege to the city. These other three guys are back in Rome, and so Vespasian kind of sat on the sidelines while Galba, Otho, and Vitellius fought it out. And after one of them got knocked off, then he went back to Rome, seized the throne, and left his son Titus in charge. When Vespasian dies, his son Titus will be the next emperor, and Titus will not live very long, and his younger brother, Vespasian's other son, Domitian, will become an emperor, and he will rule from 81 AD to 96 AD. He is the one that put John at Patmos. He exiled him to Patmos. So those three guys there are completely ignored by John because none of them ever actually sat on the throne. They fought over, but they were not successful in doing that. Any questions or comments? Again, that's a pattern in the Roman Empire. Okay. The 10 horns are in Revelation 17:12 are 10 client kings of Rome that submitted to Rome's approval to rule. Now, one of the ways the Romans governed their empire is they didn't go in and destroy the government of the people that they conquered. They vassalized them. So a vassal king, basically you had some authority in there, but your job was to make sure that Rome got paid. And Rome, in their turn, they will protect you for this. And the idea of being 10, was it an exact number of 10? Well, it was a complete number. And this was done all over the empire, and eventually they tended to winnow out the vassal kings and then make them into provinces and put their own governors over there, so you kind of cut out the middleman. But one of the things that the having a vassal did for the Roman Empire is they could impose policies on the vassal, and that would have hardships on the people, and then the people would blame the vassal because that's the one that you could always see. So, you had to implement Rome's policies whether the people liked it or not, or you liked it or not, and so you had this kind of a middleman until you finally got around to rolling them into the Roman Empire. And it was very effective. The beast power comes from Satan. Satan pulled him out of the sea. Satan's who he's working for, and he will do the will of his overlord, and he will do it very effectively. And God is using Satan to meet his purpose here. What does that mean? God has a plan. This is one of those things that it's kind of hard for us to imagine. Why would you allow this persecution to go on? Well, he doesn't allow it to go on indefinitely because then nobody survives. But he does allow it to go on. And at least one outcome of the persecutions of the early Christians was it impressed the Roman populace. These people believed what they believed to the point that they would die for it. And this is coming at a time when one's religious and moral beliefs for the common citizen were remarkably flexible. These people would die for it. And I think that may have been part of his purpose there. But to show that his kingdom, God's kingdom, is different. It's different in its loyalty, it's different in its love, it's different in its service, and that gets them noticed. Questions or comments? Let's see. The dragon and the beast are being worshipped. Again, the emperor cult's a very popular thing, and if that's not enough for you, you have all of the pagan gods that they borrowed off of the Greeks and everybody else around them that you could worship. And the beast is speaking evil against God. Those who dwell in heaven, designated as God's church, those who were faithful, are living in hell on earth in this persecution. This is pretty serious stuff, and Christians are moving all over the place. A very popular place where Christians will go in the ancient world is a place in northeastern Turkey called Cappadocia. Maybe that's how it's pronounced. I've heard it pronounced both ways. Peter writes 1st and 2nd Peter to the people of Pontus, Bithynia, and Cappadocia. The reason they would go there, if you've seen pictures of this is some very soft stone that over the centuries people have carved all these tunnels in. And if you see pictures of it, you can see all these cliffs with all these tunnels and holes and stuff in it. What they did this for was anytime somebody invaded them, they'd all go in the tunnels. And it was impossible for the invader to find them or to dig them out. They had everything they needed in there to endure this particular siege, and they never had to fight. And so Christians will go there, you know, when they're fleeing from the persecution, along with probably other people as well that might be being persecuted. Very popular place to go. This place is still around today, and if you go there, you can actually go into these tunnels and see what this kind of a thing looked like. But they will flee from it when they have the time and opportunity to do so. Questions or comments? Okay. The earth beast. Let's have somebody read Revelation 13, 11 through 18 for us, please. Keith?
Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and spoke like a dragon. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. He performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast, who was wounded by the sword and lived. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on the right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666.
All right. So this time in verse 11, we see a second beast coming, and this beast comes out of the earth. And it has a different appearance from the first beast. It has 2 horns like a lamb, and it speaks as a dragon. Why would a lamb be significant? Well, what did the first beast look like? Predators, right? Big, strong predators. And that's what its job was to do. How many of us feel threatened by a lamb? And part of the reason that we call Jesus the Lamb of God is because it's the Paschal Lamb, but generally a lamb is something different than a predator. You know, it's a more comforting thing, and so this beast is going to try to present this much more comfortable, familiar image, but what does it talk like? When it speaks, it sounds like the dragon. Now, if we're going to have this emperor cult in the Roman Empire, where we're going to worship these emperors, what good is an emperor cult without any followers? That'd be kind of pointless, isn't it? Waste of effort. And so consider that this lamb is perhaps taking a milder approach than the first beast did, with its conquering and its predation and all these kinds of things. This is taking a much milder approach to encouraging others to come and follow after it and the dragon. So that would be the emperor cult. I mean, it was a very mild thing, you know, as long as you went along with a particular game. The shrines to the emperors are built. You go in and you pay your homage once a year and do those kinds of things. Fake it, go ahead, nobody cares, just as long as you compromise this one little bit, which of course means you're going to compromise this one little bit again and again and again. But you can do that. It showed loyalty to the Roman Empire because that's part of what they wanted you to do. And it's kind of interesting that when people are trying to lead other people astray, they often do not tolerate any signs of loyalty to anything else. Especially when we're getting more and more steeped into evil, like the Nazis in Germany. You either were them or you were not. And if you were not, this was a problem for them. So, not a pleasant thought to think about in that context. And as I mentioned earlier, Nero was one of the first emperors to be actively promoted in this way. He insisted on being worshipped now. I'll read that in that part. So And there was also a lot of trickery involved in the showing the alleged divine power of a dead emperor. If you've ever seen a movie or a show that involves an old steamship and they're on the bridge, you will see a tube come up with a cap over it, and when they want to change speed, they open that thing up and they yell down there all ahead, flank speed, or whatever one of those things means, and the sound goes down that tube to the engine room, and they do what they're told. They had a lot of the altars to these emperors rigged with something similar so that somebody completely out of view could speak through a tube, and you could hear, quote, the voice of the emperor giving guidance, the voice of the dead emperor God giving guidance to you, or giving you a prophecy or something maybe you've paid for. They had a lot of trickery with that. They had a little bit of magic act going on in this to try to convince people that, yes, the dead emperor really is some kind of a deity. David Copperfield had nothing on these guys. So they would do this. In verse 16, there's a topic of discussion here that comes up a lot. It says, and he causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, and the free men and the slaves to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. Is this a physical mark that you have to do business? I don't know. I don't think so. But I do know that the head, the forehead, the head, is the symbol of our thinking. What's on your mind? And the hand is the symbol of our action. What are you doing with what's on your mind? And if you've got the mark of the beast on your head and on your forehead, what are you being loyal to? That's what's on your mind. That's what you're doing, right? That's where your loyalty is. But it also extends to the fact that it makes it very, very difficult to do business. Now, one of the things that the Christians would have as far as a form of persecution is concerned, number one, if they won't go and do their yearly offering to the emperor's altar, they're disloyal. The trade guilds in Rome do not want to do business with people who are disloyal. So that's going to make it very difficult for a Christian to buy or sell to the trade guilds. You can't offer your services, you can't buy off of them because they're perceiving you to be disloyal. A second way that this became a problem for the ancient Christians and the Jews is a lot of the Roman coins were stamped with images of Caesars or with other Roman deities or anything like that, and these Christians and Jews wouldn't carry those coins around and try to do business with them. So even if, how do you do business if you got no money? Kind of hard, isn't it? So there's a lot of economic hardship that will be built into the system here as long as you're disloyal to the empire. And, people will do that today. I don't think we do it as severe today. And certainly we don't have any deities on our currency if anybody happens to be carrying in currency anymore. But it is possible that would have been an impediment to the Christians. And so how do you function in a society when you can't participate in the economy? What's the outcome of that?
Patient endurance and faithfulness.
That's what we need, isn't it?
That's what he says.
Yeah. That's what we need. But it is going to be a rough patch. And so all persecution doesn't necessarily have to be violent. Generally, persecutors don't even start with that. They start with something else. They might start with, in our culture, I think ridicule is a very popular starting point. You demean the human being, don't like you, so I'm going to call you a subhuman or something like that. Or I'll make fun of these little idiosyncrasies that you do, your accent or your the kind of foods that you eat or something like that. But we'll start with ridicule, and if that doesn't get me what I want, then we can amp it up from there. So they're no different. So Christians will be marked themselves by not having this mark. The beast is not what's on their forehead, and the beast is not what's on their right hand. They're marked by something else. So that's, again, it's an environment that they're going to be in and they're going to have to deal with patience and endurance. Questions or comments? Okay, I want to get down to the end of the chapter here. And verse 18 here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast. For the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. I read a commentary that talked about this, and there was a system of numerology that existed in the ancient world. And it's almost kind of like a parlor game or something like that. And the way that this worked would be as if in English we took the first 9 letters of the alphabet, A through I, and assigned that the values 1 through 9. And then J in the next 9 letters of the alphabet will be 10 through 90. And then after that, to the end, it's 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, or what have you. And so then you could take this and say, add the numbers up. Put somebody's name down there, add the numbers up, and that would produce a number. And it was a very popular thing to say, find me a name, say, that comes with the value 876. Famous historical figure whose name calculates out to 876. Weird, this is what commentators said. I don't know how exactly true this is. But the name Nero Caesar in the Latin alphabet calculates out to 666. So that may be a little cultural reference. The other thing that's significant about it from a biblical point of view, the number of God is 7. 777, perfection. 666 is the number of a man. That's imperfection. So that could be, that can have some bearing in this as well. But it may be that he's talking about this as this little parlor trick that was common in that particular time. Any questions or comments?
I have a comment. My son used to do that all the time with me. He would do that calculation, and he would talk about, this is referring to the Pope. And then he would say Hitler, and then he would say all these different people, historical figures all the time. So it was interesting number games that people would do with that, what you're talking about. So they always came up with different figures.
There's a lot of letters out there.
Yeah, I know.
If you go for the biggies, maybe you only come up with a four character name or something like that. I don't know. Anything else? Well, that is our class for today, and then next week we will do chapter 14 of Revelation. I appreciate your attendance and comments, and I'm going to try to feel better next week. So.